The Purple Line is a community podcast, bringing you in-depth conversation with diverse leaders in the public and private sectors. Whether you're a student looking to gather advice or a professional tuning in for valuable resources, our dynamic programming provides tips for all ages and backgrounds. I'm your host, Emily Benavides, and this is The Purple Line.
We're joined by Amy Hinojosa, President and CEO of Latina. Let's start at the beginning. Where are you from? Introduce us to. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. Always happy to join our colleagues at Chile for a great conversation. So I am originally from a little town outside of Houston, Baytown, Texas. My first introduction to Washington, D.C., if we're going to go all the way back, is when I came to debate camp at American University as just after my freshman year of high school. And it was my first time away from home, my first trip without my family. And after the first week, and it was in the days before cell phones, right? So you're calling home once a week on a payphone, right, in the student lounge. And my parents asked me, they were like, well, so what do you think? And what I told them at the time was, have you ever been in a place that you felt like you belonged? And from that moment on, I caught the bug. And so everything I did after that um, was to come back to Washington. I didn't know for what. I didn't know for what reason. Um, and so about a year after college, I again didn't have a plan, but I packed a bag and I came here and didn't have a job, didn't have a place to live, didn't know a soul. But I checked into a youth hostel and stayed in a room with 14 other people, and I temped until I found a permanent job here in Washington. That was 25 years ago. And I started working at MANA 17 years ago as a director of their National Hermanitas program. I've now been with the organization for 17 years and have now led it for 10. This month marks my 10th anniversary of being the president and CEO of MANA. Wow, congratulations. It's a huge achievement. You mentioned growing up in Texas with obviously very strong Hispanic roots. How has your cultural background influenced your identity, and how do you bring that to work every day? Well, I think one of the great things about working for a national Latina organization is that you innately get to bring who you are to the workplace every single day and to work in coalition with all of our national Latino organizations, ones like Chile. eh, You get to be who you are, and there's no drawback to that, right? And growing up in Texas, and I have a bit of a different background. So on my father's side, I'm Mexican American, third generation born in the United States. And on my mother's side, I'm Cajun French from Louisiana. So, I always say that my childhood was marked by it, like the hallmarks of my childhood really are spicy food and accordion music. So, I think that just being able to stand in your own shoes and to speak whatever language comes to mind in whatever circumstance, and for that to be valued, that's something that I want to inspire other people to do. Be proud of who you are, where you came from, what you represent, who you represent, because it's what makes you special and it's what gives you your magic. Definitely. Definitely. I love that. Are there any specific experiences or traditions from either of your heritages that, have made a significant impact that you want to share? Sure. I think cooking is one, right? And I was really lucky as a kid to have so much of my extended family around. So, for example, on my dad's side of the family, we lived within a block of my grandparents, my great grandparents, and lots of extended cousins. And my mother's side of the family didn't live more than 5 minutes away, so we were all together all the time. So, we sort of, you know, grew up with these strong family values. And then obviously music was a hallmark. But everyone in my family is musical, and we couldn't have a holiday or a birthday without like my grandmother at the piano, my granddad played the trumpet, my dad and other uncles play the guitar, and everyone would sing, and and it was just a party all the time. And it was just this joy of life to bring forward. And I think that's part of the reason why I love to work for Latina organizations because we just get to celebrate who we are and uplift women who are incredible. But at the same time, you need a little help, maybe need our work on in the advocacy space to make sure that they have all the opportunities to be exactly who they want to be. So, can you walk us through your professional journey and the pivotal moments that led you to be, the president and CEO of an organization that is really uplifting the community like this? I yes, and I think that that first journey coming to DC was probably the start, and I got to work at lots of different organizations, but the truth is even throughout years, like my high school years and college years, volunteering and being part of the community was something that was central to my identity too. So I would always, above and beyond a 40-hour work week, volunteer with different organizations, whether it was the National Hispanic Institute back in Texas, and I got to DC. The way I make friends is volunteering with Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership, which is a leadership program for high school sophomores all across the country. Um, and then a little bit later on, I went to work for the Girl Scouts doing Latina outreach. And so there was a particular pivotal moment there. And, at that time, this was more than almost 20 years ago, there weren't as many Latinas that were in Girl Scouts here in the District of Columbia. And, as I was thinking about it, as I was doing outreach, as I was talking to families, what I knew would reach them didn't have anything to do with patches of grass. Latino parents want to know how they can get more educational opportunities for their children. That's what really motivates them. So I really pushed to create a program, and we created a patch, and we had a girls' conference at Catholic University. It was called the Encuentro de Chicas Latinas de los Girl Scouts, and it was super fun. And we got over 200 girls from the DC metro area to come to this conference. And we had all these wonderful professional Latinas who were speaking to them in different organizations. And it just was this moment of opening all their eyes to all the possibilities. One, that they could have in their careers, but two, that the Girl Scouts could help them meet. Um, and the Girl Scouts of the USA actually called us being like, hey, we've been trying to do this nationally for years and haven't been able to get one in Key West. Can we send the girls and we've been working with to your program? And so, of course, we would love that. And so they sent girls, and they were actually from San Diego. And it turns out they were members of Mana de San Diego and also a Girl Scout troop. And so that was my first introduction to Mana. Okay. And from that experience, then a job opportunity came open at Mana, and I saw it, and then I had tons of different people go, "Kate, this is your job. You should go for this." Um, and I thought, gosh, I can do local organizing. I'm good at this. When building this program here at the Girl Scouts of the nation's capital, do I have the experience to move to a national organization to work? And the job was to work for the National Hermanitas program that MA has, which is what we consider to be the jewel of our programming. It's mentoring for girls, Latinas in middle and high school, and it's a program developed by Latinas, for Latinas, and it's administered all across the country. And so when I got the opportunity to take that leap from a local organization to a national organization, that was really where I felt like I came home, right? In many respects, there are always steps along your career where you find where you're supposed to be. And one of the things that we love to say about Pana is that it's an organization we do good work, but Pana is about a sentido. It's a feeling that you get when you're with your hermanas. Mana, we say, is short for hermana, sister. And so it's this feeling when you get with your hermanas that really makes the the association, the membership, and all of our events so special. And that's what keeps people coming back year over year. And this year we're celebrating our 50th anniversary of Mana. Oh, wow, that's wonderful. So it really feels like you, or sounds like you have a wonderful community that you've built here in DC and nationally. What was it like coming to DC? You said you grew up with your extended family right down the street, like having all these celebrations, like all these things. Is that sort of what you have now with Mana? Or like talk to me about that the difference and how you've um, really built what it sounds like an amazing ecosystem. I think that there are moments in your career where you get to decide who you want to be, right? And one of the it, one of the great pieces of advice that I got early on is that all you have is your name and your reputation, and you are the only person who gets to decide whether those two things remain intact throughout your career. And so when I came to DC, as I started making friends, and my friends that I made volunteering when I, first came to DC are my friends to this day. And they're the folks who we all knew each other before we had responsibility for anything. And we're just, out of these fun streets having a great time and learning, and making more friends and making more connections, right? In service to our jobs as well, right? But it is making that decision, and I think that finding a space like Mana, where that's the goal, where our every day is centered around mentoring, educating, empowering women, and then figuring out how to advocate for them, to have more opportunity to be, to live healthier, stronger, more advantageous lives. When you get to do work like that, that speaks to your soul, it's not work. And so then and then finding this community of all of our national Latino organizations. One of the great privileges I have right now is to chair the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda, which is the coalition of 40 of the most influential national Hispanic organizations. And as we work on a policy agenda going into this election cycle, with 14 different verticals, all the issues as they impact the Latino community, seeing the love that everyone has for that work makes you want to work harder. I, it, and again, it doesn't feel like work when you're doing good things for your people and making a difference. And it really, I can't stress enough how much fun it is to know that you're helping people every single day. I can just feel the joy like exuding from you whenever you talk about this. This is wonderful. I would love to hear more about the role that mentorship plays and at whatnot. Um, what advice would you give to young professionals seeking mentorship opportunities? Like how can they best make make the most out of their relationships in those early job opportunities, especially, young Latinas that aren't familiar with, the intricacies of DC life. For professional women starting out in a career, and I just spoke to a group of students. I spoke at the Women of Excellence dinner at East Stroudsburg University just before their commencement ceremonies a few weeks ago. And the thesis of my talk to them was respect me first and like me, because the way I see it, women have a hard enough time in the workplace. But what you have to show is how you're differentiating yourself from the pack. There are lots of things that are going to come at you. Lots of folks are going to make assumptions about who you are, but what you're capable of. So you always have to be prepared. You always have to be, ready to take on more work, ready to try something new, be able to admit your faults, but understand that you need to put that first, right? Not make friends, right? And the way I think about it is I make friends everywhere I go, right? I could talk to a brick wall and have a great conversation. But at the end of the day, if what I'm thinking about is my career, I need for them to respect me as a professional first. And in many ways, I when I came to Mana, I was pretty young relative to the professional world. And then when I came to lead Mana, I was pretty young for president and CEO. I was in my mid to late 30s at the time. And when you sit, so for example, Mana sits on the board of directors for the Hispanic Association of Corporate Responsibility, which Chile is also a part of, and Marianne sits on the board alongside with me and with her 12 other Neutral Latino organizations. So many of the leaders are older men, right? And so sitting in a room like that and understanding that if I want to be seen as an equal, I have to establish myself as an equal. And that's what I mean when I say respect me first and like me later. I have no problems developing those personal relationships, but I want to make sure that everyone understands that I'm an equal at the table and that I deserve respect just as I give respect. And so, that's what I want for our young women. And, I think a lot of times we focus on appearance. Everyone tries to be cute, when they go to work, but understand when people are seeing when they see you, right? So there is a persona to it that you have to understand. That's a respect factor. And at the end of the day, you have to have pride in who you are, the work you want to do, and what you want people to know about you.
So, what do you say to women that struggle with imposter syndrome? Like, just being offered the job of like president and CEO and feeling like they aren't up to that task because they already don't. They are like the first woman that may be taking the helm. Like, how, in what words and advice, encouragement would you have?
I think with anything that scares you and anything that makes you feel timid or afraid, you have to face it head on. And you have to remember who you are, right? And one of the things is you can't control everyone around you. What you can control is yourself, your reactions, your actions. And so you will come to be seen as you present yourself. And so even if you don't believe it, right, there's a fake it till you make it component to it, of course. But look around you and listen to what's going on. You can walk into any room here in Washington, D.C. There are lots of people who speak just to hear their own voices, not because they have a salient point, not because they're, particularly educated on the subject, but just because they think they're expected to speak. And so once I realized that as a young woman, and I knew that I would come in prepared, I would have talking points, I would be ready to go, you know, in any circumstance, that's when I was like, oh, then you know what? These guys don't need to go first because they're embarrassing us. I'm going first, right? And that you just have to step through it, right? And step through that fear. And the way I see it too is that not in any room, even if there are women, not all women are there to speak for women. And my particular charge is to speak for Latinas. And so if I don't say it and I don't make the points that are relevant to Latinas, no one is going to, right? And that's okay because they all come with their own constituencies that they serve and that they want to make sure that they're heard in those rooms. And so I just feel like, and even if I'm scared, I'm the one here to say it. And it's my turn and I'm going to take it.
All right, you've mentioned that you're on the board of a couple of organizations, the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility and the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda. And you've talked about how you're there to represent Latino voices. Like, ultimately, how do you go about ensuring that Latino voices are heard in these space?
First, you have to listen to what's going on. I think that one of the most important things is situational awareness, right? Making sure that you understand what the conversation's about, what the currents are, and then where are they missing it vis-a-vis what Latinas need and want, right? And so some of it is learning as much as speaking, right? When I talk about advocacy, folks only see the podcast or right the speech in public or the op-eds or those public facing things, but the truth of the matter is I spent a lot of time researching, studying, going through ideas, talking to different people about different aspects because I want to be the most well versed person. If I'm speaking for Latinas in the United States, I better know what I'm talking about, right? And I wouldn't be doing my community justice if I didn't go in as prepared as I could possibly be every single time. So that work that no one sees, it's sort of like everyone sees the swan gliding along the water. No one sees them paddling through.
Right. Right. So you were talking about advocacy and your experience, like with grassroots campaigns on the local and national level. Can you talk to me about some like tips and tricks of the trade of advice you came to the young people to want to get organized on?
No one is alone in wanting better for their lives and their community. So oftentimes, I think people don't know where to start. right? Find like-minded people, your friends, your community, your family, organizations that you see or don't see. Figure out what's missing, right? And then where you can fill that gap. I've done everything from passing out flyers on election day for candidates, right? To large scale advocacy campaigns, right? With all of our national organizations. And the idea is, can I help make something better? Right? And that doesn't have to be a big fancy, right? So we have these myths, right? That everybody should be a boss and everybody should be a CEO and there aren't enough of those jobs to go around. So if I'm thinking about what I need, what my family needs, the idea isn't to be the boss. How can I, right? How can I be of service? How can I make something just a little bit better? That's where real progress comes. Those incremental pieces are what drive change, right? Not the big things that you see, and not the fancy reel, right? The sizzle reel at the end of something that makes it look like super glamorous. The hard work is where it's at. And so if you really want to be an advocate, you really have to be ready to dig in, do the hard work, push your sleeves up, and then be ready for that big moment, right? There's a lot that comes before that.
So, transitioning a little bit, you've talked about a lot of how you speak up for the issues facing Latina women. But what do you think are the most pressing issues facing Latina women and girls today?
Well, I think if you look, we're in an election year, so there are tons of polls. Obviously, jobs, the economy, families trying to figure out how to make ends meet are super important for Latinas, where I think um, what I think gets lost in the conversation is that Latinas still only make 51 or 52 cents in the dollar for what a white male earned in the same job. So that not being paid, not stay. So if you're underpaid, you're not able to save for retirement. You're not able to make ends meet. If inflation goes up, you're impacted harder than everyone else, right? Harder to afford childcare, harder to, because the average Latina in that wage gap uses an average of $1 million over their lifetime. Think about if you had an extra $1 million because someone else is making that money that you're right. So sorry, coughed a little bit. Continue.
So, Emily, would you be able to scoot to your left a little bit with your chair? That's perfect. Thank you.
So money is the first thing, right? That pay gap. But second, I would say access to healthcare, access to reproductive care. We're seeing the landscape of healthcare in many ways change. Access to um, whether it is medication, whether it is access to care, all these things feel like for many folks are getting further and further away. Latinas still remain among the highest rates of uninsured and underinsured. Um, and so figuring out how we level the playing field in the healthcare space so that we have access, right? And I think lots of folks conflate availability of care with accessibility, right? Just because it exists doesn't mean that I have access to it, that I can afford it and take time off of work, that I can have, childcare, transportation, all those things to be able to access that care. And uh, in addition to regular health benefits, right? We also have high rates of obesity, high rates of heart condition, high rates of diabetes, and these were all the things that made the COVID pandemic so deadly for our community and so devastating for us. And then as a result of that coming out, mental health has always been an issue for Latinas, in particular young Latinas. In middle and high school, and that's why our Money Thus program was created, actually, to help Grace feel a little more valued and better sense of support, have understand the negative impacts of drug and alcohol abuse, and to just feel like there are folks there for them in addition to their families, right? Mentors never supplant family, but at the same time, we want them to know that just like I was talking about earlier, the way I grew up with a community of people around me and family, that's what we want young Latinas to know, that there's a community around them that cares about them and wants the best for them in their lives. And so, but then we have, along comes the advent of the internet, social media, and these messages that girls get that they have to look a certain way. They have to wear a certain clothes and buy certain, mugs to drink out of, right? In order to be accepted in some way or to be lauded with likes and retweets or whatever. We didn't say retweets anymore, but we just have to remind girls, and that's part of mental health, and then obviously school, the pandemic, all the things that face young girls that you and I faced as teenagers are magnified by a huge factor now, and we just have to figure out how to get in front of it, and then remind girls at every turn that they are valued no matter what. That you don't have to see and be all of those things for us to value you. We value you. Period.
So it sounds like the Rainitas program, you're really taking steps to address and bring to light these issues.
Yeah, and it happens in an organic way, right? And the beauty of HANA is that we didn't invent this model. This is what Latinas have been doing historically, generationally, and I think I learned from my own grandmother, who was that senora in the neighborhood that everyone came to for advice, for consejos, for, you know, permission to get married, right? Like she was just the person in the community that everyone trusted her opinion and valued, right? And this is exactly the model that Nana uses, and we want to make sure that young Latinas have that adult to go to ask questions, right? And maybe you're there to ask your parents, questions. Maybe they don't have the answers. Maybe you're a first gen student. Maybe they didn't go to college in the United States. They don't know how to fill out the FAFSA. They don't know how to write, an essay for your college application, to fill out those college applications. That's where we have mentors and community have been through that. And they're like, you know what? I want to make sure I didn't know those things. I want to make sure that the next generation also knows. And so, and even, some of our chapters of mentoring them all the way through college, all the way through grad school. And these are lifelong friendships and, it's a sisterhood that's been built, over generations.
Thanks for listening to The Purple Line. For the latest updates, follow Chili on social media at THECHLI. And you can follow me at EMBENA. Thank you for joining us on The Purple Line.